Welcome back, everyone. We are jumping right into part 9 of our 20-part series on mastering medical coding modifiers. Today is all about lowering those audit risks with absolute precision. But before we decode these revenue-saving strategies, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Decode Healthcare with Harshal. Here's our quick roadmap for this explainer. 1. The trouble with Modifier 59. 2. Enter the X modifiers. 3. SE, the separate encounter. 4. SS, the separate structure. And finally, 5. Bulletproof documentation rules. Let's get to it. Section 1. The trouble with Modifier 59. Because honestly, this is where the headaches start. To break this down, we're pulling directly from our source material today, the Complete Guide to Modifiers. This is your essential roadmap for bypassing those NCCI edits correctly without waving a red flag. Here's the core issue, guys. Using Modifier 59 is, well, kind of like using a broadsword in a surgical suite. It's just way too blunt. Because it lacks specificity, the OIG has literally flagged it as high risk for abuse and unbundling. It's an instant audit magnet. Section 2. Enter the X modifiers. Let's talk about the solution you should actually be using. So back in 2015, CMS realized this generic modifier was a huge problem. Their fix? The XE-PSU subset. Instead of a broadsword, these 4 modifiers, XE, XS, XP, and XU, are your precise scalpel. They force you to explain exactly why a service is distinct. Why should you care? Because precision equals cleaner claims. These modifiers define the exact reason for distinction, which significantly lowers your audit risk. They offer way higher defensibility with payers, and CMS actively prefers them over 59. All right, let's dive into our first one. Section 3. XE, the separate encounter. XE literally stands for separate encounter. You append this when a service is distinct for one specific reason. It happened during a completely separate patient encounter, but on the exact same date of service. So where do we draw the line? You use XE if a patient is discharged and readmitted, or seen in different care settings on that same day. You absolutely don't use it for a single continuous encounter. Let's look at a real-world scenario from the source text. Say your patient has a routine morning office visit. Then, that evening, they show up at the ED with an acute injury seen by the same physician group. You'd bill both, right? But you append XE to that second, distinct evening service. Moving right along to our next one, Section 4. XS, the separate structure. XS stands for separate structure. This is all about anatomy. You use this to tell the payer, hey, this service is distinct because it was performed on a totally separate organ or anatomical structure. Do use XS for clearly separate body areas or distinct organs. Don't use it for contiguous organs. And listen closely to this. If you just use a different surgical approach on the exact same structure, yeah, that doesn't count for XS. Here is a perfect surgical example to lock this in. Procedure 1, excising a lipoma on the left thigh. Procedure 2, excising a cyst on the right forearm. You build a primary, then append XS to the secondary. It perfectly communicates that these were truly separate structural sites. Now for the most critical part of all of this. Section 5. Bulletproof documentation rules. We all know the golden rule. If it isn't documented, it didn't happen. For XE, you absolutely need timestamp notes to prove the encounters were separate. For XS, meticulous anatomical site details are non-negotiable. And for both, you have to explicitly state the medical necessity for every single distinct service.
Let's wrap this up with the ultimate cheat sheet. Just look at this comparison. Modifier 59 is generic, actively discouraged by CMS, and carries a very high audit risk. Meanwhile, XE and XS are highly specific, preferred by CMS, and keep your audit risk much lower. It's a no-brainer, right?
So you've officially mastered XE and XS. But what happens when you're dealing with distinct practitioners or some truly unusual, non-overlapping services? Well, that's exactly what we're going to decode in Part 10 when we tackle modifiers XP and XU. Until then, keep those claims clean and your documentation bulletproof.